the dark mind trick that forces you to say yes. You say yes to people every single day. But what if I told you that in a lot of those cases, you were never really given a choice? There's a subtle mind trick used by the world's best persuaders that practically forces you to agree to their requests. And the craziest part? It all happens before you even realize it. Think you're in control of your choices? What if I told you that your brain has a built-in feature that makes you crave consistency, even when it's not in your best interest? This feature is being exploited every single day. You walk into a store for one thing and walk out with three. You agree to a quick favor for a coworker, and suddenly you're managing their entire project. Have you ever said yes to something and later thought, wait, how did I end up agreeing to that? This isn't an accident, it's a strategy. And today, we're pulling back the curtain. The problem, the illusion of choice. The problem starts with a huge blind spot we have about our own minds. We have this powerful, deep-seated need to be consistent. We want our actions to line up with our past decisions and who we believe we are. Society rewards this, right? Being consistent makes you seem logical, stable, and trustworthy. Nobody wants to be seen as flaky or unreliable. And it's that exact desire that opens the door for manipulation. Master persuaders get this. They know that if they can get you to make one tiny, seemingly harmless choice, your brain will feel a quiet pressure to stay consistent with that choice later on. You've already said yes once, so saying yes again just feels right. Think about the last time you signed up for a free trial. You punch in your credit card info for a service you're just trying. That's a small commitment. You're signaling to yourself and the company, yep, I'm interested in this. When the trial ends, what happens? You're automatically billed. The path of least resistance isn't to log in, find the settings, and cancel. It's to do nothing. You're already committed. You've already proven you're the kind of person who uses this service. Canceling now would feel inconsistent. This happens in conversations, too. Someone says, "Can I just ask you a quick question?" It's almost impossible to say no to that. But that quick question is the foot in the door. It's the small commitment that opens you up for the much larger request that's right around the corner. Before you know it, you've spent 20 minutes giving detailed feedback or agreeing to a huge task. You were led down a path, and the first step was a tiny, easy yes. The reveal, naming the demon, pre-commitment, and consistency. So, what is this invisible force? It's a well-documented psychological principle called commitment and consistency. It's one of the 6 key principles of persuasion that Dr. Robert Cialdini identified in his legendary book, Influence. The rule is simple. Once we make a choice or take a stand, we feel this internal and external pressure to behave consistently with that commitment. When we commit to something, by saying it, writing it down, or even just clicking a button, we're basically tying our own hands. This is called pre-commitment. You're committing before the real decision has to be made, limiting your future options to make sure you stick to a certain path. A classic example is the story of Ulysses and the sirens from Greek mythology. Ulysses knew he wouldn't be able to resist the sirens' enchanting song, which lured sailors to their deaths. So, what did he do? He pre-committed. He ordered his crew to plug their ears with beeswax and to tie him to the ship's mast. He instructed them not to untie him, no matter how much he begged or pleaded. He intentionally sabotaged his future freedom because he knew his future self would be too weak to resist. This isn't just an ancient myth, it's a strategy used on you all the time. Every time a salesperson asks, "So, would you prefer that in blue or black?" They're not really asking about the color. They're cleverly sidestepping the bigger question, "Are you going to buy this?" By getting you to focus on a minor detail, they make you pre-commit to the idea of buying. Your brain skips ahead to owning the item, and now the act of purchasing is just a way to stay consistent with the choice you already made. The demonstration, how it's used against you. Let's break down the specific tactics that come from this principle so you can spot them out in the real world. The most common one is called the foot in a door technique. It works exactly like it sounds. You start with a request so small that it's almost impossible for someone to refuse. A famous 1960s study by Friedman and Fraser showed this perfectly. Researchers went door to door and asked homeowners if they would be willing to put a huge, ugly, "Drive carefully" sign on their front lawn. As you can imagine, only 17% said yes. But in a nearby neighborhood, they tried something different. First, they asked residents if they would display a tiny 3-inch sign that said, "Be a safe driver." Nearly everyone agreed. 2 weeks later, the researchers came back and asked that group to put up the huge, ugly sign. This time, an incredible 76% said yes. Why the huge difference? Because the second group had already pre-committed. They had identified themselves as citizens who cared about driver safety. To say no to the second, larger request would be inconsistent with who they now were. You see this everywhere. A charity asks for just a single dollar. A political campaign asks you to sign a petition before they ask for a donation. Marketers ask you to follow them on social media before they try to sell you something. Small yes, then big yes. Another version of this is public commitment. When we make a commitment in front of others, the consistency principle gets even stronger. Cialdini tells a story about a restaurant owner who had a serious problem with no-shows for reservations. About 30% of people wouldn't show up. His receptionist used to say, "Please call if you have to cancel." The owner told her to change just 2 words. She started asking, "Will you please call if you have to cancel?" And then she would pause, waiting for the person to actually say yes. With that one tiny change, that small moment of active, public commitment, the no-show rate dropped from 30% down to 10%. That's the power of a verbal promise. Now that you can see how this is used to influence your decisions, you're probably wondering 2 things. How can you defend against it, and how you can use it for your own benefit? Understanding these tools isn't about becoming a manipulator. It's about understanding human psychology to improve your own life and communicate better. If you want to learn more secrets about persuasion and how the mind works, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. The ethical pivot. Using this power for good. The real difference between persuasion and manipulation comes down to intent. Manipulation is about tricking someone for your own gain, often at their expense. Ethical persuasion is about creating win-win situations. It respects the other person's choice. So, how can we use pre-commitment for good? First, let's talk about self-persuasion. You can use pre-commitment to force your future self to be better. If you want to stop procrastinating on going to the gym in the morning, lay out your gym clothes the night before. That small action pre-commits you to the bigger goal. If you want to eat healthier, don't just hope you'll avoid the junk food. Pre-commit by getting rid of it. There are even apps built on this. Apps like Stick or BeMinder let you set a goal and pledge money that you'll lose if you don't follow through. You are intentionally making it more painful to fail. Language apps like Duolingo ask you to commit to a daily goal, labeling you as a serious or intense learner, which makes you want to live up to that identity. This is you, just like Ulysses, tying yourself to the mast to protect yourself from your own future weakness. Second, you can use this in your relationships and work life to create positive change. When you're on a team project, don't just assign tasks. Get verbal buy-in. Ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that we can hit this deadline? If they say a 7, you can follow up with, what would it take to get that to a 9? This isn't a trick. It's a way to check in on and solidify commitment as a team. In a negotiation, instead of jumping straight to the hard stuff, start by establishing things you both agree on. I think we can both agree that we want this project to be a success, right? Getting that first yes builds a cooperative frame and makes it much easier to find common ground later. The goal isn't to trap someone. It's to build a foundation of consistency toward a shared goal. So in conclusion, the principle of commitment and consistency is a core part of who we are. Most of the time, it's a good thing. It guides us to be reliable and trustworthy people. But that same internal wiring can be used to lead us down paths we never meant to walk. Understanding this isn't about learning dark psychology just to control people. It's about seeing the invisible strings that guide our behavior. It's about taking back control. It's about knowing when a small yes is just a small yes, and when it's the first step into a carefully laid trap. And more importantly, it's about learning how to use this powerful force to build better habits for yourself and to build stronger, more honest agreements with the people around you. You can be the one who sets the terms of your own commitment. So, I have a question for you. Think about a time you agreed to something small that ballooned into a much bigger commitment. What happened? Share your story in the comments below.